Of all the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles variations, there was one in 1989 that left a lasting impact on fans. Although it debuted in the pages of the Archie Adventure series, these suits nearly became the main versions of the Turtles in the Mirage comics. But what was the rationale behind the Turtles using these wrestling suits? Today, I will explore the intergalactic wrestling adventures of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Archie Comics Edition. After the debut of the Turtles in May 1984, their creators, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, considered giving them new costumes. These redesigns were conceived before they realized they had a hit on their hands. At the time, it wasn't clear that each turtle would wear a distinct suit, but they likely considered these to differentiate them, as they all appeared identical in the black and white comics. For instance, Michelangelo might have worn a steel-grayed helmet with wraps on his arms and legs. They even considered replacing his right hand with a cyborg one made by Donnie, switching his nunchaku for a 3-section staff and a sword. Leonardo was envisioned with a new belt featuring 2 straight straps, and they toyed with giving him a mask or a hood similar to what Mikey would end up using. In another design, he would have worn a gi. Donatello could have sported a rising sun bandana paired with a poncho-type shirt. Considering his less violent nature, they thought about replacing his weapon with 2 mini billy clubs, or alternatively 2 mini daggers. This design transitioned directly into the Archie version of Donatello. Raphael's design was unique compared to the others, who were inspired by traditional Japanese styles. He was influenced by the symbiote Spider-Man suit that debuted earlier that year. He would have worn a full-body black spandex suit, initially intended for all the Turtles to survive in space. While the Turtles maintained their original style in the Mirage comics, Peter Laird eventually painted the 4 Turtles in these final designs for their first comic show booth. This painting ended up in the hands of Ryan Brown, a key figure for today's video, as he collaborated with Steve Murphy on the Archie Adventures adaptation. But why did the Turtles end up wearing these suits? And why did they play a part in an intergalactic wrestling competition? In the climax of their first fight against Leatherhead on a precarious bridge beneath the streets, the mighty mutant seemingly fell to his death. However, the Turtles soon discovered he'd been rescued by a giant disembodied cowhead named Cuddly the Cowlick. This interdimensional being, who could also travel to other universes in the Turtleverse, took them hostage. Of all the places and times he could have chosen, he took them to his boss's workplace, the arena on Stump Asteroid, the base of operations for the Intergalactic Wrestling Federation, or IWF for short. The IWF was an obvious parody of the WWE, which at the time was called World Wrestling Federation, or WWF, until the World Wildlife Fund forced them to change their name. At the arena, the Turtles met the organizers, Mr. Stump, a parody of the then real estate mogul Donald Trump, and Sling, a parody of the boxing promoter Don King. Completing the parody, Stump was a dead tree that continuously took pills from Sling, who was a money tree. This would later be explained as a symbiotic relationship. The Stump asteroid was located in Dimension X, and the arena covered its entire northern hemisphere. The organizers chose the Turtles to represent their quadrant of the Milky Way galaxy against their will and without their weapons, leaving them no choice but to fight. We would soon start meeting new characters from this tournament, like Trap, one of the most popular wrestlers in the stable who could later also officiate as an announcer and referee. Unfortunately, he used guns, which would put him at odds with the Turtles at times. Other ring persons would be Time and Fame. Time was an old man and an ex-ring boy. He was originally from Earth and abducted by aliens as a kid to be studied by Dimension X scientists. But these scientists were caught red-handed trafficking body parts, and when Time was freed, he found himself stuck in Dimension X without a way to return home. One day at the planet Cerveza, he met Stump. The two formed a friendship, and this made him decide to live at Stump Asteroid. Fame, on the other hand, was an artificial being created by Dimension X geneticists. These beings were made for a variety of purposes, but Stump purchased her to serve as Time's replacement as the old man was nearing retirement. But don't let her artificial label fool you. Fame had her own life, and she even started dating Trap. One particular fighter debuted in the story named Cryin' Hound, and it would be almost impossible to not know his name as he'd constantly repeat it. This annoying characteristic saved his life as a pup, as everyone looked the same in his race, and after a fire, many kids who didn't know their names could never be returned to their moms. But Cryin' Hound did, and that's why he constantly repeated the phrase. As with many things in this franchise, there's a funny story behind the character, as told by Ryan Brown. Back in the day, Mirage artist Steve Levine would promenade around incessantly blathering at the top of his lungs, "My name is Ryan Brown." Don't take my impression as the real thing. So this inspired Steve Murphy to give that characteristic to the wrestling alien canine. Ryan and Steve often submitted Cryin' Hound to Playmates for an action figure, and considering he had 4 arms, it would have been an impressive figure. Unfortunately, Playmates didn't show interest until 1993, when they nearly stopped releasing new figures that weren't turtle variants. Cryin' Hound was the champion the Turtles needed to defeat. In parallel, the current champion, Ace Duck, would go against Leatherhead, so I guess there was already a representative from Earth in the competition. Unlike other versions of the character, this Ace Duck was the reigning champion of the team who came from the planet Perdoofus. Not much else is known about him other than the fact that he had a lot of self-confidence and wasn't afraid to use his wings in combat. After all the introductions, the Turtles wore their wrestling suits for the first time. Cryin' Hound and Ace Duck were tough competitors, but in the end both the Turtles and Leatherhead defeated them simultaneously. This coincided with Cuddly's inability to keep the Turtles' weapons, which resulted in a chaotic situation for Stump and Sling. Armed again, the Turtles ordered Stump to return them to Earth. Fortunately for the organizers, Leatherhead decided to stay there, as people saw him as a star instead of a freak. Upon their return, the Turtles continued to use their special suits until they defeated Wingnut and Screwloose, who would also join the IWF. Afterward, only Raphael continued wearing his black suit. Splinter initially protested this choice, but Raphael explained that the suit would help him blend into the darkness. After all, it was dark half the time. Once more, the Turtles teamed up with the IWF during their final battle for the Turnstone on the planet Hyrule. The Turnstone, a directional thought transanimator, could make its users' thoughts become a reality. Krang sought it, and Cherubay possessed it. This led to a conflict where the Turtles were slightly overpowered. At that critical moment, Cuddly appeared and offered to bring reinforcements to the Turtles on behalf of the Stump Network in exchange for broadcasting another exclusive match for the IWF. The Turtles agreed, and Cuddly freed Trap, Wingnut, Screwloose, and Leatherhead to assist them. Naturally, the entire conflict was also televised. Together, they confronted the invading forces of Queen Maligna, who was aiding Krang in return for planet Earth. Ultimately, it was Leatherhead who resolved the conflict by returning the Turnstone to Cherubay. She not only set the villains on their respective paths, but also shut off the Stump broadcast. In the end, Cherubay removed the stone from existence, or so she thought. I'll do a video on this final conflict in the future. Queen Maligna was furious. As she prepared to invade Earth, she decided to exact revenge on Stump and Sling by attempting to incinerate them. Leatherhead, Wingnut, and Screwloose intervened, rescuing them, and together they escaped to the Stump asteroid aboard Cuddly. Aware that another planet was on the brink of destruction, Cuddly transported Leatherhead, Wingnut, and Screwloose to Earth to help thwart the invasion. Naturally, the Stump Network televised this dramatic event. I covered this battle for Earth in my video about the Mutanimals. Sometime later, Cuddly encountered the Turtles amid a grueling journey through a desert and offered to take them home, but only if they fulfilled their promise to wrestle once more for the IWF. Desperate to return home, the Turtles agreed, and were transported along with Splinter and Ninjara to the Stump asteroid. To their surprise, this time they were pitted against each other, and the winner would face the new champion, El Misterio. Donning their wrestling suits again, the Turtles were initially reluctant to fight one another. However, Raphael's eagerness to win spurred them into action. fighting each other, Leo took Mikey down first, with his eyes already set on fighting Raph. Unfortunately, he lost to Raph. The final fight was Donnie versus Raph, but Donnie won thanks to some movements he learned from books. Donnie then faced El Misterio, who was none other than Crying Hound. In the end, he defeated the Forum Canine and became the champion of the Intergalactic Tournament. A new character debuted in the story named Bloodbath, some sort of wolf man that won a match against Ace Duck. Cuddly would take them back to Earth, but not home. They would team up with the Mutanimals again in a story that I already covered in my Mutanimals video. The Turtles returned to the Stump asteroid one last time when a mysterious black hole appeared in the middle of Dimension X. Stump offered his services to combat Mazul's Imperial forces, which were exploiting the unnatural disaster that I discussed during the Black Hole Trilogy in my Eye of Sarnath video. Stump and his affiliates never reappeared, but Raphael donned his wrestling suit on at least 2 more occasions. One was for a short story published in the Turtles' 30th anniversary special, and the other was for the Forever War saga. While the latter was a fan-made project, its first chapter is technically canon, and thus relevant here. Raphael wore the suit in the anniversary special primarily for its unique look. In the Forever War, his choice was motivated by his dark mood following his breakup with Ninjara, symbolized by the black suit. As the years passed, the concept was reintroduced in the IDW continuity with the Dimension X miniseries in 2017, a story I'll cover in a future video about the Trial of Krang saga. All but Mikey donned an updated version of the Archie wrestling suits, with the most notable change being Raphael, who now had bare arms and legs and only half a mask. Additionally, Leonardo was nicknamed El Samurai, and Donatello became Superstar Donnie. The Dimension X miniseries revived many of the characters discussed in this video, and is definitely worth a read. Donnie's Rising Sun bandana was almost used by Leo in the unproduced 4th live-action movie that I'll talk about at some other point in the near future. In 2023, NECA announced the release of the Intergalactic Wrestling Turtles for their Archie line, which might be available by the time you watch this video. In my personal experience with this variation of the Turtles, I believe Raphael's black suit was the standout redesign, and I think the creative team behind the Archie book felt the same way. It clearly set them apart from the Fred Wolf cartoon. But what do you think? Do you have a favorite among the costumes? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, see you in the sewers.